Two prominent figures in Colorado Republican politics are on a countdown to turn themselves in to face criminal charges alongside Donald Trump, and we're exploring the connection between a voting system breach in Colorado and the breach in Georgia. A school pushes back the start of classes due to a teacher shortage.
This is not just a temporary, momentary shortage. This is endemic.
The governor celebrates the rocky rollout of universal preschool and suddenly changes his tune on whether kids should have full-day pre-K. And an ode to the latest California transplant to come to Colorado. This one has a checkered past. Tonight on Next. The latest Trump indictment, like the underlying false claims of election rigging, trace right back to Colorado. Tonight, two prominent figures in this state's Republican politics are under indictment alongside the former president. And we're also examining a connection to the voting breach in Mesa County. Marshall Zellinger gets us started.
My name is John Eastman.
On December 3rd, 2020, John Eastman testified in the Georgia legislature. At the time, he was working at CU.
I'm also serving this year as a visiting scholar at the University of Colorado.
His involvement in this hearing is his first reference in the indictment. It's a felony charge for trying to get the lawmakers to unlawfully appoint Trump electors, even though Joe Biden won Georgia. During this hearing, Eastman suggested one of two scenarios: that there was election fraud in Georgia and that state statutes governing elections were not followed.
Your argument is that essentially we have a failed election that would require the legislature to step in and assign electors. Am I correct?
Yes.
And as it stands today, what are we, May 10th, 2022.
15 months ago, I interviewed Eastman over the phone and asked him if he still believed that 4 states, including Georgia, should have picked Trump electors even though Trump did not win those states.
The evidence continues to mount of illegal conduct that affected the results of the election.
Eastman faces 9 counts. Some involve phone calls he had with Trump and associates trying to get Trump electors in place in multiple states. Other charges involve meetings and phone calls with Trump and the vice president to get the VP to reject electoral votes or delay the electoral count to allow Trump electors to be selected. Also indicted, former Colorado lawyer Jenna Ellis, a current fellow at the Centennial Institute at Colorado Christian University. She faces 2 counts. She was also at that Georgia legislative hearing where Eastman testified. Her first reference in the indictment is a November 19th news conference at the RNC headquarters, where she's alleged to have made false statements about the election results in Georgia and other states.
State and local level officials, and all the way up, have changed the rules. That's what the Democrats do. If they don't like the rules, they change them.
Ellis, Eastman, Trump, and the others have until next Friday to turn themselves in. Raise your hand if you're learning about the RICO Act and racketeering in the last 24 hours. The reason that you're hearing from multiple people in this indictment, or seeing multiple people in the indictment, in different states, it's not just Georgia, because a lot of the stuff with Jenna Ellis actually involved Pennsylvania, Arizona, and other states. That's where the racketeering comes in, that you have this conspiracy, multiple people going toward the same end goal, and it goes Georgia and beyond. But it's all this evidence that says, look at all these people doing this same thing for this one end result.
You have definitely heard that one potential defense in this case could be that even election rigging lies are free speech. But I mean, speech is involved in all kinds of crimes. I mean, give me your wallet, there's right. Speech involved in that as well. But speech gets real tricky for people when they are under indictment or about to be indicted.
Well, as we got John Eastman in California trying to delay a disbarment hearing so that he doesn't have to say things or prevent himself from saying things that are going to incriminate him somewhere else. So you've got the speech, I'm going to say something over here in 2020, and then in 2023, oh, you want me to talk about, I can't right now.
Please, no. Please don't make me speak. All right, Marshall, thank you. Our next question is about another Colorado connection to this latest Trump indictment. AJ wrote us to say, what they're alleging happened in Coffee County, Georgia is sounding a lot like what happened in Mesa County with Tina Peters. I was thinking the same thing at one point today, AJ. There are certainly similarities and there are differences. It appears, however, that one of the unindicted co-conspirators in this latest Trump indictment was the guy at the very center of the Mesa County voting system breach. Like in Mesa County, Colorado, prosecutors in Georgia allege that Trump supporters illegally gained access to voting systems as they searched for proof of voter fraud. They're claiming that Denver-based Dominion Voting Systems rigged the election. In Mesa County, prosecutors have not said that former Republican clerk Tina Peters ever directly coordinated with the Trump campaign. That's what's alleged in Coffee County, Georgia. Peters was more directly connected with My Pillow guy Mike Lindell, as he unsuccessfully searched for evidence of voter fraud. But there's one key connection between the Mesa County breach and the new Trump indictment. Prosecutors in Colorado say Conan Hayes, a former pro-surfer, he was the guy that Clerk Peters snuck into the Mesa County voting system to make copies of files. And court documents indicate that Hayes is one of the unnamed, unindicted co-conspirators in this latest Trump indictment. He's mentioned when Trump attorney Sidney Powell directs that he get a copy of Dominion voting systems data that came out of Michigan. Following Mesa County's voting system breach, Democrats in the state legislature here approved funding to defend against so-called insider threats to election security. And today it just so happened that the state announced that the nearly $1 million has now fully been given out to counties. The grants allow county clerks to increase their security with new key card systems and video surveillance of voting equipment. We should mention, Mesa County had video surveillance. It was turned off on the day of the breach there. The Election Security Act makes it a felony to tamper with voting equipment or to give other people unauthorized access to do that. And anyone convicted of an election-related crime will now be barred from serving as an election official in Colorado. There's no going back to school if there isn't a teacher in that classroom. Jeffco schools canceled preschool classes at one school because of a lack of teachers in the building. And another district in the metro area is asking voters to raise their own taxes, specifically so they can pay teachers. Here's Mark Salinger.
While most kids went back to the classroom at Seacrest Elementary in Arvada today, the youngest did not.
She was super disappointed.
Chrissy McLean was ready to take her 3-year-old daughter to her first day of school.
Yep, we were.
They signed up for classes through the state's universal pre-K program. Then she got an email a couple of days ago from Jeffco Public Schools telling parents the start of preschool classes at Seacrest was delayed because there aren't enough teachers.
It says, "Dear Seacrest preschool families and staff, it is with regret that we inform you of the delay in opening of our preschool classrooms for this upcoming school year."
The email blames the problems on unforeseen staffing challenges. Districts around the state are struggling to hire teachers.
We used to have hundreds of applicants for a teaching position. Today we have 5 or 3 or sometimes 0.
In Douglas County, Superintendent Aaron Kane says the district is short 52 teachers and 155 teaching assistants. Voters there will now decide whether to increase their own taxes to fund schools.
When someone right across the way offers you $19,000 more a year, it's really hard to turn that away.
While it's too early to have hard data for this school year, the number of unfilled teaching positions at the start of the school year last year increased 64% from 2021 to 2022. From 440 to 722 unfilled positions. Jared Stallings is the Dean of the College of Education at UNC in Greeley.
This is not just a temporary, momentary shortage. This is endemic.
Back at Seacrest, parents now hope preschool will start on the 23rd as the district scrambles to hire some last-minute teachers.
If they don't hire anybody, then what's next?
The state actually added incentives to become a teacher recently. Colorado signed on to a compact that simplifies the process for teachers who move here from out of state. And teachers can now get a stipend to finish their student teaching while they're still in school. Still, in a state like Colorado where teacher pay is low and cost of living is high, Kyle, it's no surprise that we're in this situation.
When I think about teacher pay, I think about my parents. My parents were both teachers. We lived in a rural area where cost of living was really low. I don't know how like a 2-teacher household could make a go of it in so much of the Denver metro area and even some rural areas in Colorado.
You look at places like Summit County, for example, or Pitkin County and Aspen, some of the most astronomically high housing prices in the entire nation. And then you say, well, we need teachers there as well. Some of those counties are actually looking at building housing for teachers so that they can even afford to live there.
Oh. All right, Mark Salinger, thank you very much. Democratic Governor Jared Polis has taken a victory lap as the state begins his universal pre-K program. You won't hear much clapping, though, from the 9,000 families who believed they were getting full-day pre-K, only to find out at the last minute that it's half-day. Polis blamed that on his team, unclear messaging. And he also told us that he doesn't think that kids need full-day pre-K. Then today he said this.
We would love if the voters approved full-day preschool for everybody, but what the voters approved was half-day preschool, and that was based on a funding source from the nicotine tax.
Again, as of last week, Polis was adamant that the research shows that kids don't need full-day pre-K. We'll follow up with him to see if this means that he's going to back a measure to fund full-day universal pre-K. At last check, more than 30% of the state's universal preschool seats were still open. That's a problem for providers. They've told us that they expected to be fully funded for full classes. Instead, the state is only going to reimburse them based on filled seats, enrollment. A wet winter and spring mean short-term relief for Colorado River users. There's a reason, though, we should not celebrate at this point. And one of California's most active bandits gets a new home and a new identity here in Colorado. One of our photojournalists said, "I have an ode to Hank the Tank in song." Sure, we'll put that on next. The Colorado River Basin got a good drink from above-average snowpack and spring rains. The drought's eased, so federal regulators are loosening water restrictions for the states that rely on that river. It's not a long-term fix, though. So each August, the feds put out a 24-month outlook for the river based partly on water levels at the two big reservoirs, Lake Powell and Lake Mead. Arizona, Nevada, California, and Mexico rely on those reservoirs, and right now they're forced to make cuts whenever Lake Mead gets too low. For the past year, Lake Mead's been under a Tier 2 shortage, forces states, especially Arizona, to make major water cuts. Today, federal regulators moved Lake Mead to Tier 1 status. It means that the states still have to make cuts, just not quite as much. Federal regulators said the recent rain and snowpack were a relief, but not enough to refill those reservoirs. They're both at about a third of their capacity. Crispy Donkey, it's a bit like getting a drink in the high desert. It kind of relieves you for a moment, but it doesn't solve the underlying issue of how am I going to get more water when I need it.
I think that's exactly it, Kyle. It's, I think, a momentary reprieve rather than a long-term solution. We're starting to see that now. It's been a very dry start to our monsoon season in southwest Colorado, but getting some actual relief for today as well. Now, here in Denver, we have had a cool and, of course, very wet start to our summer. Worth noting that, again, for eastern, or I should say for western Colorado, it's been a very different start to our summer. But for us here in the eastern part of the state, we have only had 20 days at 90 or above so far this year. And for a bit of context, at this point last year, we were at 51 days at 90 or above. But today we did get up to 92 degrees. That is actually fairly close to our seasonal average of about 88 degrees for us for this time of year into the mountains. Most of us in the 70s and into the 80s. And we actually still do have some showers and storms around for the southwestern mountains, the San Juans, the Sangre de Cristos, on up, even into the flat tops. We've had some showers and storms around for today. Those will gradually dissipate as we head over the next couple of hours, and then we'll give way to a fairly tranquil evening. We'll wake up to lots of sunshine, basically statewide, as we start things off for tomorrow morning on your Wednesday, August the 16th. Now, for tomorrow, for us here in Denver, mid-90s. If you thought today was hot, 92, we're going to tick things up by a couple degrees. I'm kind of tempted to raise that high up to maybe 95, 96 for tomorrow, but no matter exactly how you slice and dice it, it is going to be hot for tomorrow. We do have the chance for a late storm here in Denver. I think between about 2 and 6. It would be pretty isolated, and I think for most of us will stay dry. But if we do get a storm, it'd be brief and produce some maybe gusty winds and a little bit of lightning. That chance between them again about 2 and 6 p.m. tomorrow, and then things gradually dry on up for us. 7-day forecast. Once we get past that, it stays on the hot side for really the rest of the week, with showers and storms returning for perhaps for Friday and Saturday.
Well, Hank the Tank's a hungry bear wandering the streets.
You know, there was a time when the West's most famous bandits had ballads written about their exploits. And that time is now, because you're watching next.
Old Mo's a grizzly bear wandering Colorado at the turn of the 20th century. Eating cows and scaring folks and ravaging the countryside. Old Mo's the grizzly bear, what a story. Old Mosey killed some folks in southern Colorado, so some people started hunting him down. Morton Pig, he caught him in a trap, he thought he had him, but old Mosey found his way out.
The Ballad of Old Mose, as performed on Next a few years back by our Mike Grady. His ode to an infamous grizzly that once terrorized our state. The latest big bear to capture our attention is not nearly as fearsome. Henrietta, or Hank the Tank, as she's been called in the news, has mostly been involved in property crimes, not killing stuff. 21 home invasions in California, which is what got her banished to an animal sanctuary here in Colorado. And that led Grady to pick up his guitar once more.
Well, Hank the Tank's a hungry bear wandering the streets in California garbage cans, finding food to eat. She's coming through the door, and she's breaking into houses with easy food to score, saying, I got mine, but I want more.
Normally, those kinds of bears are euthanized on a regular basis in many states that have bears, including Colorado. Wild bears, that's really, truly their daily operation, and their daily goal is to find food and survive.
Wildlife Animal Sanctuary, refuge in Colorado. Gave her a new home and tons of food.
Hank arrived, I think it was last Tuesday that she came in. And it is a female bear, so instead of Hank the Tank, we're calling her Henrietta. She likes to go into her water tank every day and swim, so every time you fill it up, she gets in it and displaces half the water and plays around in it. And so she's pretty happy.
Now Hank the Tank has a new home and a new name. She goes by Henrietta and the refuge isn't lame. She was looking for food that was easiest to find, cause that's what bears do to try and stay alive. So as human beings, we have to do our part to keep our food and waste locked up in the trash cart. Henrietta ate the food that came to her. She's a lucky bear now, that's for sure.
She's very, very lucky, because like I said, this is a really rare case, and we're just really glad that she has a home to go to, but everybody needs to realize that very, very few bears get that opportunity, and we need to be more responsible.
Mike Grady, everyone. So Hank the Tank had accomplices. She had cubs that were out snatching food along with her. Good news is they were old enough that they could be weaned off her care and still young enough to be returned to the wild. Wild is a pretty good word for a good bit of this program, and that usually includes your feedback, which is next. Feedback tonight from Dave Keeley, who says stating that Donald Trump falsely claimed that the 2020 election was stolen is not reporting the news. Dave says, but rather that is expressing and broadcasting an opinion. I expect better from 9 News. Dave, I would welcome your feedback or anybody else's on what word we should use for false claims if you don't want us to say false. We're certainly not going to present a false claim as if it's the truth, or as if you should spend the next 5 hours on Google coming to the same conclusion. If something's false, we're going to tell you. Let me let you in on a little secret here. The people who traffic in misinformation are counting on the cowardice of journalists to not call a lie a lie. All of us, journalists included, have no need to be impartial when faced with a falsehood. We should call it just that. But I'm open to suggestions about how exactly we do that. Stephanie writes in to say, Crispy Donkey, you crack me up, but why don't you remind folks why you call Crispy-onky that? No, I just want to let them keep wondering. Or you could Google that.